Earth is home to many creatures. Some may even consider a few of them monsters. But what of those more elusive and hidden creatures? The ones we just can't seem to find. Welcome to Monday Morning Monsters. Cryptozoologist and paranormal researcher Barnaby Jones talks about the unknown, mythical, undiscovered, and unidentified creatures from around the world, and the people who have seen them, look for them, and research them. Hear from witnesses about their encounters, as well as renowned names in the field about their work and research. Barnaby is the founder and lead investigator for Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society based in Wisconsin. CAPS travels across Wisconsin and beyond looking for connections between different phenomena and how they can all be connected. Now, your host of Monday Morning Monsters, Barnaby Jones.
Good morning, monsters. Welcome to the show today. I'm your host, Barnaby, and I am running things again today, so we're up for a wonderful, show. So we're going to, hopefully everything works smooth without Todd here, and we have a great show today. We have an amazing guest. Allison Jornlin is here, and I got some quick things to cover right away. So, up this weekend, the CAPS team is going to be at the Milwaukee Paranormal Convention, and that is this Saturday, and we're going to be talking all about that in just a minute here with Allison. She is another one of the speakers at the convention, so you get to hear a little preview of the stuff that she's going to be covering and all kinds of stuff, because she's got talking about completely different stuff today. But also, I think I mentioned this on the last show. This is coming up as well. A couple years ago, the CAPS team did a live paranormal special on YouTube, and it went over pretty well. We were going to do one last year as well, but there was complications with it. So this year, we are going back to that same location that we had planned to. We can't tell you much about it because of reasons, but we are going to be doing a live Halloween special on Saturday, October 29th, and Stephanie Lynn from Chat with Charlie is going to be a special guest on there, as well as Ellie will be there as well. And that will be live on the Cryptids, Anomalies, and Paranormal Society's Facebook page. So you guys can watch that along live. I think we're going to be starting around 7 o'clock, and it should be a lot of fun and a lot of cool stuff. So I know I have the CAPS team is going to be at CryptidCon in Lexington, Kentucky, the end of November, the weekend right before Thanksgiving. And we're giving away 2 free tickets to that event. And if you want to enter to win those, you can go to our YouTube page, which is Wisconsin CAPS, and find the video there. And then you have to subscribe to our YouTube page and leave a comment on the official entry video. And next Monday on the show here, we are going to be drawing that winner. So you have 1 week to enter yet, and get your entry in for the 2 tickets to CryptidCon if you want to go to Lexington, Kentucky. It does not include travel or hotel or anything like that, but you get 2 tickets to the event. So really cool. We are a sponsor of CryptidCon this year. So hopefully, you guys, you can see you out there if you're anywhere in the Lexington, Kentucky area, or if you just like to travel, go check us out. So with that all out of the way, our guest today is, as I said, going to be one of the speakers this coming Saturday at the Milwaukee Paranormal Convention. And there's a lot of great people there going to be speaking. One of them is going to be Allison Jornlin. And she joins us today for Indigenous People Day. And so I thought, what better way to celebrate that than to talk about some of the folklore, legends, and creatures of the indigenous people. So without any further ado, I would like to bring in our guest, Allison Jornlin.
Hey, Barnaby.
Hey, Allison, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me on today.
Absolutely.
And happy Indigenous Peoples Day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Why don't we start out? Tell us a little bit about Indigenous People Day, if you would.
Yeah, well, it's an effort that actually I think it started back in the 1970s, to tell you the truth. But in the last 10, 15 years, there have been a lot of cities and states that have been choosing to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day instead of Columbus Day. And so now Wisconsin is one of those states. And that's in no small part due to my former fourth grade class in 2016. They were so interested in getting Milwaukee County to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day that they wrote a resolution for the Milwaukee County Board, and it was indeed passed almost unanimously. We had one no vote, but everybody else voted for it. And it passed right at the end of 2016. And then in 2019, Tony Evers, Wisconsin governor, came to their school, Indian Community School in Milwaukee, and actually signed this statewide proclamation of Wisconsin, that Wisconsin would now celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. And he did it with the students. He signed it with them around him back in 2019. So I'm very excited that I could play a small part in it, but it was my class that really made it happen.
Wow, that's really cool. So you're the perfect person to have on today.
Yeah. So I just to give you a little background, I taught at Indian Community School, which is a Native American school, for 13 years. I'm non-native. I'm just your garden variety European mutt. But they took me into the community, and it was a great honor to teach at that school. And now I'm a professional weirdo, and I write ghost tours for American Ghost Walks, the sponsor of the Milwaukee Paranormal Conference.
Very nice. Yeah, your brother Mike Huberty actually runs that, correct?
Yes, he does. Yeah, it's a family business. We work together on providing haunted history tourism throughout the United States.
Caps actually got to go on one of the Chicago tours down there, and it was very, very informational. Awesome tour. My tour guide, I can't think of his name right now.
Probably Tony.
Tony, yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, that doesn't sound right though. Yeah, Tony, super great guy. I just saw him this past weekend, him and Jack down at the Chicago convention, and so good, a wealth of knowledge, and he's such a busy guy. He said he gave a library talk in the morning, and then he was at the convention, and then he had a bus tour that night. So
yeah, we keep him busy.
Oh yeah, but he's good. He's good at what he does. I think he said I can't remember how many years he's done the tours and stuff, but it was a long time, and
yeah,
he's very
experienced. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And you guys do tours all over the U.S. and is it Puerto Rico too, right?
Yeah. So we're not everywhere, but right now we're in 6 states and Puerto Rico, and we're working on the rest.
Yeah, that's really cool. Really cool. I had Mike on our my other podcast, Whispers from the Dark. So anybody that's listening, if you want to go check out Whispers from the Dark wherever you get your podcasts and look up the Mike Huberty episode, you can hear all about American Ghost Walks and the places that you can get tickets, and especially now because it is the Halloween season and the paranormal season and stuff. And it's definitely worth your time. The tour guides and everything are amazing, and Allison's wrote some great stories and stuff and the research behind it. So definitely
and we
check that
have
out.
offerings all year, but of course,
Oh
right
yeah.
now
Mhm.
is when it's most popular. But yeah, Mike's my brother. For those that don't know, this is a family business, and we were inspired by my mom. She would gather us around the radio every Halloween, and we'd listen to tales of haunted Chicagoland told by the guy who really started haunted history tourism in the United States, Richard Crow, back in 1973. He would always be on WGN in Chicago. And so we'd always listen to him every Halloween. And I think that really got into us. And I started Milwaukee's first tour back in 2008. That's where we began, and we never stopped. So,
Very cool.
yeah.
So we've kind of touched on some of your stuff, but why don't you go into some detail about who you are and some of this other stuff that you've done and researched and that.
Oh, well, I
Yeah,
don't like
that's a
to
big
talk.
ball of wax right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, I don't like to talk that much about um, me, but I will be presenting at 2 o'clock on Saturday at the Milwaukee Paracon that we mentioned. So, Milwaukee Paracon, there's a whole weekend of events, but if you want to see the speakers, those are on Saturday, and that's Saturday the doors open at 9 and it goes all the way to 6 o'clock. And the first speaker starts at 10. And that's at Alverno College at the Bucyrus Center. So I'll be there speaking at 2 o'clock on Milwaukee Fortiana. And my specific topic this year is premonitions and crisis apparitions. So every year I present on something weird in Milwaukee, what could be called Fortiana after Charles Fort. So that's anything weird that's happened in Milwaukee. It could be ghost stories, UFOs, cryptids, you name it. If it happened in Milwaukee, spontaneous human combustion, I talked about one year. We do have one case. Uh, so yeah, every year since 2015, I believe. I think that was the first one. I present on Milwaukee Fortiana, and then this year I'm just taking a subsection talking about people who have had premonitions of tragic events, and or they've seen crisis apparitions, which is a specific kind of ghost, which could be classed as a premonition because the ghost comes to you at the moment of death. And then, of course, you know about the death before you're notified through conventional means. So that's what I'm going to be talking about at 2 o'clock on Saturday at Alverno at the Bucyrus Center. What will you be talking about, Barnaby?
Well, I think I'm on at 4, right?
Yes.
Yep, I will be on at 4. I spoke last year. I'm actually wearing the last year's T-shirt right
All
now.
right. We
From,
always have cool T-shirts.
yep. I will be speaking at 4, and I will be doing a presentation on cryptozoology. It's very interactive, very back and forth with the audience, and it's as much information as you ever wanted about random cryptid topics and the history of cryptozoology and creatures. And yeah, so it definitely from I just gave it in Milwaukee Chicago this past weekend, and everyone in the audience, from a basic person that doesn't know anything about cryptozoology to somebody that has been researching it forever, there's definitely things in there that you're going to learn no matter what level you're at, because I gave some information to somebody that thought they knew everything about Bigfoot, and so definitely interesting. So
Yeah, so
even
something for everyone.
yep, something for every level of cryptozoology enthusiast in this presentation. So definitely
Great.
come check that out.
Great. So, I am basically a historian, a weird historian. So that's what I bring to all my presentations. But, from what I've learned as an educator and as someone who was brought into the Native community for 13 years, I just really saw that there's a disparity between the way that Native American creatures are presented in the general culture. That takes it away from its native roots and often isn't authentic. So that started bothering me, and then we were at we were up in Menominee for what was the event called?
Marinette Menominee Bigfoot and Paranormal Convention.
There you go. So
back in June.
Yeah, so we were speaking there in June, and I talked about some Native American creatures and kind of addressed some of those misperceptions that I've seen. And I think the biggest one that I want to talk about today is the Thunderbird, because that's really my favorite. And I was really surprised when I started teaching in the Native community that, the idea of this monstrous bird that is unbelievably huge with 26 foot wingspan or larger, something like that, as it's described, would not be really a fearful thing, but more of a protective element, at least for the cultures that I'm most familiar with, being the 11 federally recognized tribes in Wisconsin. So among these tribes, the Thunderbird is thought as being, I would say sacred, a creature that could protect you from other cryptids that mean to do you harm. So that's very different when you think of how others perceive you big flying beasts like that. They perceive it as terror from the skies, has been referenced, and I actually saw that in my own life as well. I haven't had my own experience, but before I began teaching, I was weird a long time. So back in around 2000, I was very weird as well as I am now. And I was at a Christmas party with my family, and my brother, Mike, gave me a big book of UFO stories. And I was opening the presents in front of other relatives in my extended family. And one of the relatives that saw me open the book, well, one of them had a UFO story, but the other one that spoke up, he started with, "I think I saw a dragon." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" So his name is Kevin Walkowski, and he is my cousin. And he told me back in 1988 that he had seen something resembling like a humongous bird, or as he was able to sketch it for me, it looked more like a pterodactyl. He claimed to have seen this creature while he was waiting for the birth of his first son in the waiting room of a hospital in Brookfield, Wisconsin. And this hospital overlooks a bluff, and he saw this huge creature flying in the sky just as plain as day, and it terrified him. This was a really fearful event for him. But I mean, no ill will was conferred on him by the sighting. I mean, his son wasn't cursed or anything like that. In fact, his son is getting married this upcoming June. Everything is peachy. So, but the point is that our cultural background can give us a very different impression of the sighting that we have. To him, it was really scary. To me, when he told me about it, I equated it with the Thunderbird of Native American legend. And to me, it was a blessing because, as I said, no ill will was confirmed. There was no curse of the Thunderbird or anything like that. But he saw something sacred and then enjoyed the birth of his first child. So it's very different than, a Mothman sighting, for example, where, people tend to equate anything related to, something dire. So when you see the Thunderbird, it's a sacred thing, at least among the Native community. And in fact, at Indian Community School, every spring we would rededicate something called the Spirit Pole, which is a monument, simple monument that we put up to the spirits, and we would put up a new pole and tie new tobacco offerings on it. But that spirit pole was actually dedicated to the Thunderbird. So we'd have a ceremony every spring asking the Thunderbird to protect us from the coming storms of the spring and summer season. So when you look at the Thunderbird, it's completely different in the Native community. For example, when you look at one of our 11 nations in Wisconsin, the Menominee, which claims to be the oldest Wisconsin tribe, on their tribal seal, they actually have a Thunderbird. So it's not thought to be something very fearsome. It's thought to be something strong and protective. And indeed, the idea of these creatures was they could fly high, and that's where the Great Spirit was. That was closer to the Creator. So, for example, the eagle is thought to bring your prayers to the Creator, and the Thunderbird has a similar role, although because it's so huge, it's very protective. And it looks for anything coming from below. What lies beneath is what's thought to be, I guess you would say, evil in Native American beliefs in this area, that there's these creatures underground that come up. The Oneida, another one of our cultures in Wisconsin, when I was at Indian Community School, had the benefit of taking a native language every day, and I took Oneida. And my teacher in Oneida class said that anytime you see a rainbow, that's actually a message from the Creator to the Thunderbird. It's kind of like a bat signal, like the bat signal for the Thunderbird, that, oh no, there's creatures coming up from below that you have to protect humanity from. So that's what that is signifies in Oneida culture. So just like Batman, he was, as a superhero, is thought to be kind of scary. The Thunderbird is formidable, but he's also a protector, like Batman. So the rainbow is the Thunderbird's bat signal. So you can see that, maybe some of these things I'm talking about are different than anything that you heard. So I want to mention the Piasa bird. We talked about him when I saw you last. So the Piasa bird, what do you know about it, Barnaby?
Not very much, but I will tell you I had the opportunity after talking with you back in June. Back in September here, I took that road trip out to Utah, and I stopped and I actually checked out the Piasa bird.
You did? Okay.
Yeah, just down by Elton, Illinois.
Yes.
So right outside the St. Louis area. I've been to St. Louis so many times and I never knew that it was so close, and I would have went and checked it out, but I did now.
Yeah, so that's in Alton, Illinois, and it's right across the Mississippi, as you said, from St. Louis, and so there's this monstrous bird creature that's painted on an outcropping of rock, but the one that you see isn't the real one. Did you know that?
I did, actually, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a reproduction, and it actually wasn't in that location originally. It was it was right above a rock outcropping where people would pass in canoes quite often. And there's a confluence of rivers there. I believe it's the Mississippi and the Missouri that come together. And right at that confluence is where these pictographs were located originally. And we know about them because of Jacques Marquette, who came as an explorer, as a missionary in 1673, and he wrote about them in his journal. So right now it's only like one creature that's painted on the side of this bluff, and but it was originally two creatures, and if you read the entry from Marquette's journal, it refers to this crazy looking beast with scales and a fishtail, and there's no mention of wings. So how did it become the Piasa bird? Because it looks like kind of a fishy creature, and then all of a sudden, so this is jumping from 1673 to 1836. A guy named John Russell decided he was going to write about it, and he said he had an authentic Illini story of the Piasa bird. He called it Piasa, and he said, Piasa means the bird that devours men. And it really captured people's imagination, that this idea that this valiant tribe was battling against this terror from the skies, and the chief sacrificed his life so that he made him tossed himself up for bait so that the warriors could catch and kill this menace. Anyway, sorry, it's all bunk because I as an educator, I'm familiar with academia. So I was like, oh, wow, is this really true? And then I started digging around, and I found that academics and archaeologists, for a long time, they've been talking about this creature and representing it not as a thing with wings, but as another monster in native lore called Missipiju. Have you ever heard of Missipiju? Yes. Okay. Tell me what you know about Missipiju, Barnaby.
That's about it.
Okay. So Missipiju is a water monster, and it likes to drown swimmers. So, we had talked about this. It's not that no one in native culture reveres Missipiju, because he also does other things like protects copper deposits and stuff like that. But generally, when you're thinking of evil things in native cultures, they come from below. They don't, their venue is not the skies. That's a sacred venue connected with the creator. But these other creatures come from below, and Missipiju is one of them, and it likes to drown swimmers. Now, another name for Missipiju in English is just the underwater panther. And I was like, when I first thought of the underwater panther, I mean, it was really hard for me to visualize, like, what do they mean? Like a cat that's underwater? Cats don't like water. Well, but that doesn't make sense. But then as I started to do my research, I realized that I did not know this, but jaguars actually still come up from Mexico into the United States. Today, they only get as far as Arizona. But in the past, maybe in the 1600s, for example, they ranged much further. Where did jaguars hunt? Unlike any other cats, they hunt in the water. So just imagine how foreign that would be. You're in the water and there's this fearsome beast. It could be very well a jaguar. Now, maybe that's where this idea of this monstrous evil cat came from in native cultures. But interestingly, oh man, there's just so much, Barnaby. So I shared that Father Jacques Marquette, he did not write about wings, so it's not a bird. In his journal, you just have to go back and read it, and you'll see there's lots of description. I can't believe he just left out the wings because it goes on and on. I was going to read it to you, and I'm like, no, it's just too long. And then other explorers also mentioned these petroglyphs, including Father Antoine Hennepin. So that's the modern depiction. That's the modern depiction of it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I had to pull it up. I had pictures of it.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. So see if you can find a picture of Mississippi and see
you don't
what
want
comes
much,
up.
do you?
Yeah, well, as long as you're doing it. So Father Hennepin saw it as well and described it and talked about how he had a lot of interactions with the native people, and they told him that a creature meeting the description of Mississippi haunted those waters, and they blamed Mississippi for actually drowning a hunting party a few years before. And so they would make offerings, but they also put up those rock paintings as a warning to passersby that you were entering dangerous waters. Like I said, the confluence of two huge rivers, rapids. So these are things that could bring about the capsizing of your canoe very easily. So that's another witness. And it wasn't until 1836 that John Russell made his claims and claimed that Pyasa means the bird that devours men. Well, now, later on, we have language scholars that actually study the Illini and Miami language groups, and they're like, what? It doesn't mean, Pyasa doesn't mean that at all. They are convinced that the word is actually Pe-isha, which means the little people. And this makes a lot more sense when you hear the real story of what was supposed to have happened there. Not that the Illini were being tortured by this creature that was hunting them from the skies, but one that was hunting them from below. So the story was published in 2015 by a researcher named David Costa. He publishes a translation of the authentic Illini story told by George Finley, who was also known as the Path of the Storm. And he was recorded in his native language, reciting the story in 1895. And the story basically surrounds the culture hero of the Illini. And this hero is captured by the underwater panther and taken to its underground lair, where it locks up its victims and then eats them at his leisure. So this creature proceeds to eat one of the other hapless prisoners in front of the hero, and then promptly falls asleep. Well, the hero is able to escape his bounds and find that the monster is actually hoarding gunpowder. So he is able to construct a dummy that looks like one of the prisoners and stuff it full of gunpowder. Then, when the monster awakes hungrily, all the prisoners push towards the entrance of the cell, and they make the dummy most prominent. So that's the one that the indiscriminate monster chomps down on, at which point the hero lights a match and the poor monster explodes. So then the hero has his own awesome underwater bachelor pad lair, and he is hanging out there until a couple of little people come and they kick him out. So It's funny that the little people have this role in the story, but it's just that they take over the lair for themselves and kick the hero out, and that's the end. So that's the authentic story. And sometimes when you hear these stories, they might not make as much sense to you because they're not of your culture. They don't have the touchstones that you're most familiar with. They make sense to the people that told these stories, to the people that were part of this culture. So that's how you really know, like, you're getting an authentic story. If you recognize everything a little bit too much, it's way too westernized. So I'm not the only one who thinks this. As I mentioned, other academics have written on it. Um, in fact, I wrote an article for Mysterious Universe about all of this, that it's a monster, but it's not a bird, and why, and you could look it up on the Mysterious Universe website. But I got done doing this, and I found that there was actually a story on JSTOR, an article on JSTOR, which stands for Journal Storage. It's an academic archive where you can go and read academic articles, many of them for free. So I looked up Piasa, and I was like, oh my gosh, I could have saved a lot of time, because there was a professor, Dr. Natalia Mary Betling, a professor from Illinois, who actually wrote an article called The Piasa, It Isn't a Bird, back in 1973 for the Journal of Illinois State Historical Society. So this information is out there if you seek it. Now, the most startling thing, and you can see this on my article if you'd like, but back in 1992, Lucien Champeau was able to, another academian, was able to find a reproduction of Marquette's long lost sketch, because it didn't even, he not only wrote about what he saw on that bluff, but he also included a sketch of the monsters. And unfortunately, that was lost to history. So people didn't, they were only able to take the written description until Costa found, actually not Costa, sorry, Champeau found this map produced in 1678 from Marquette's notes. And in the map, they redraw the picture of the Piasa bird. And again, it doesn't have wings, but interestingly, it has spots. So that again connects us to the possibility that the jaguar could have possibly had a larger area that it roamed back in the day, or at least the stories of it traveled among native people all the way up to Illinois.
I was looking because I took pictures of the signs there, and I was hoping that that one that you had said was there, but it's not. It's actually oh, hang on, I'll bring it up here. It's pretty much the same as what's there now. That one.
Oh yeah, so
that's the picture that's on the
right, I know that's
and
on the placard, right? I have a picture like that
both
too.
Of the creatures, like you said, but this one does still have the wings here, like we had talked about.
Right, absolutely. So actually, let me, because I want people to see it. Let me give you a link that I know has it. So
okay. Yeah, I tried to find Machu Picchu, or all I could find was Machu Picchu, and I couldn't find it.
Machu Picchu. Yeah, well, it's a very difficult spelling. So pronouncing is difficult, and the spelling of native languages, and not to mention the cultural differences. So I think that's why, as researchers, we've got to really be careful what we say. Try to check with native sources as much as you can. But again, I think there's still lots of barriers. Let's just say that between just run-of-the-mill Americans, like Euro nuts, like me, people who don't. Yeah, there it is. So that's what Lucien Champeau found, the drawing as it appears in Marquette's notes, that was reproduced in a 1678 map. So
Yeah, it
anyway,
definitely
as you
looks like it has kind of like a serpent tail with fins at the end
right,
and spots and horns and
yeah, so
kind of similar, but no wings. Yeah.
right, yeah, so you can definitely see the horns. Sometimes those are representative in certain drawings as meaning like you're the leader, or you what are like the king of the waters, that.
Mm.
So instead of being something that's physically on the creature, it's more of like a crown. Think of it like that. Um, and but the fish stuff is weird because obviously if it was a jaguar, it wouldn't have a fish tail and all that. But if you look carefully at that image, although some of the images of this creature seem to show scales, you can see on this image that the markings that are on the body very much look like the markings of a jaguar. So my point in this is to say we got to be really careful when we represent Native American beliefs, and maybe next Indigenous Peoples Day, I have Native friends. Not all Native people are into the paranormal, of course. Like no one is. Like no culture has everybody is spiritual or everybody is into weirdness. But I do have some friends that are Native American researchers at either into ghosts or cryptids or both. So if you want to talk to one of them in the future on Indigenous Peoples Day or any day, I can definitely connect you.
Sounds
But
awesome.
yeah, there's just so much out there in terms of native cosmology that's really amazing, uh, and it would be great to know the real story instead of just like the Americanized version of what Native people believe. So let me just say, I was really surprised about Bigfoot, for example, that I didn't know. I'd heard that's represented in many Native cultures, but I wasn't really sure about it because of things like the Paisa, where it's clearly some white guy just wrote a story like out of his own head, and then he claims that it's a Native story. And when I compare it to the actual Native one, you can see there's not a lot of resemblance there. So there are a lot of things like that. So I was thinking maybe that was the same of Bigfoot. And some tribes have certain creatures in the forest, and people try to equate them with Bigfoot, and I'm like, I don't see it there. But among the Ojibwe, which is one of the dominant cultures in Wisconsin, we have 6 bands of the Ojibwe. So the 6 bands account for the 6 of the 11 federally recognized tribes in Wisconsin. So in the Ojibwe language, I was really surprised. I got to take some Ojibwe classes. I didn't take it every day like Oneida. But so when I took Ojibwe classes, I would talk to my instructor, and I was like, hey, what about Bigfoot? What are the what are the Ojibwe words for Bigfoot? And he had a couple of names, and I'm like, okay, are these modern constructions? Because sometimes in Native languages, for example, okay, like you want to speak Ojibwe, well, how do you refer to a toaster? You know what I mean? Because that wasn't extant long ago, when this language was being created. So how do you refer to that? So then you have to kind of come up with a construction of things. So I asked the teacher, I'm like, hey, is this like a, more of a modern word that's a construction to fit something in Western culture? And he's like, definitely not. These are ancient words. And so that really surprised me, that there is a creature similar to what we see in cryptozoology, in westernized cryptozoology, that is represented in the native lore and language of this area. So I mean, that's really a surprise, and that really makes me excited because I just love Bigfoot.
Yeah, that's neat. Like you said, like it's represented in like a lot of different cultures, but to have a specific one right here in Wisconsin, that a lot of people like don't realize that these creatures are right here. A lot of people think they're just in the Pacific Northwest or something. So that's cool that it goes all the way back.
Right. So yeah, like you said, many people think that Bigfoot is just represented among the Pacific Northwestern tribes, but that's not the case. We have stories about Bigfoot here, and when we were at that event in Menominee, I was really astounded because someone from the Ho-Chunk tribe approached me, and he was very open, which among some groups doesn't happen as often as you'd like, because when you have a minority group that hasn't been treated right for hundreds of years, you can understand why they might not just jump forward and offer you information, because they're afraid of what's going to happen with it, because Native people see how things are twisted, like the Piasa bird, for example. And, no amount of talking about it seems to change that people keep seeing it as a bird, even though that's not authentic to the presentation of what it was supposed to be. And even Ken Gerhard, after I did my presentation, he said to me, "Oh, Allison, I did a presentation very much like this in Alton, Illinois one year when I was speaking there." And I was like, "That's awesome! Great minds think alike." So what was really special this June is when this person from the Ho-Chunk tribe came forward and started telling me stories about Bigfoot, and that he had some experiences, but that also Bigfoot went back into tribal history among the Ho-Chunk, and in kind of a fearful way, unlike the Thunderbird. He said that the Ho-Chunk had a war with Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. And I had never heard that before. But so these creatures have a long history in Native American lore. And of course, every tribe is going to have a bit of a different spin on it. And you have to take every tribe individually. But I mean, that was really, really surprising to hear about that, because the Ojibwe look at Bigfoot as more of a big brother of the forest kind of creature. So in a book by Eddie Benton called the Mishomis book, there's a story about Bigfoot in there, and that's one of the definitive books about Ojibwe culture that we gave to the kids at our school, and it's very popular in Indian country. And it talks about Bigfoot right in there as being kind of the big brother of humanity, and like a spiritual leader to help us, like environmentally, to get back to our roots, and get back to what's important. So as you can see, I hope in these few examples I've provided, you see that we kind of get a different idea of some of these creatures than you might normally get in modern Western interpretation. So I want to just open it up to see what questions you had, or if anybody else has any questions.
Yeah, definitely. If whatever platform you're watching on, if you want to leave a comment in there, it shows up on our stream here, and we will address any comments that pop up over there. If you have any questions for Allison about any of the creatures or the ghost tours or anything that we've talked about in today's show, go ahead and leave them over there. Do you have any reference to like the little people in Wisconsin?
Oh, well, yeah, we certainly do. So this is something that, I mentioned in the original Illini story that, hey, there were two little people that just came in at the end. So we definitely do have little people that are talked about in amongst the 11 federally recognized tribes in Wisconsin, but it's hard to get more information about them because in general, they're not talked about. And this is done as a sign of respect. But I know that all over the country, there are different stories of little people among Native groups. And my friend Brian Frijo, who's from he's from Oklahoma, and he is part Pawnee and part Seminole. And amongst those tribes, he's shared some stories with me about that the little people are there, and sometimes they communicate with you via messages or synchronicities, but you're best off to maintain distance. So I thought that was interesting because that sounds a lot like the way that the Irish looked on the little people, that don't get too close. that they could be very powerful and very destructive. Now, Brian doesn't share any stories that are too scary, but he did talk about a story that involved someone that was helping out at a powwow, and he went to get something and ended up getting lost in the woods, following a little native boy. But the native boy wasn't dressed, like everybody else, modern dress at the powwow, but was dressed in maybe traditional clothing, like from the 19th century or earlier. And he was following this little boy and ended up getting lost in the woods. And it took him a while to find his way back. And he explained what happened, and everybody was like, oh, yes, you have to be careful. Don't just follow people, because these could be the little people. And so that was really interesting because that's a direct, you can compare that directly to the Irish understanding of being fairy led, that the fairies will sometimes lead travelers into danger, at least in the Irish interpretation, or just for a laugh, get you very lost. So I was really surprised about that. And, we should be looking for commonalities like that, and understanding that sometimes, there's cultural bleeding into, there's traditions that bleed into each other. That might be evident here, but more tantalizing is the idea that perhaps these little people, the Fae, are everywhere around the world, and they exhibit similar behaviors that are represented similarly in a variety of different cultures over centuries. And so that could maybe show us that there's actually some reality to the phenomenon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier when you were talking about, you know, the water panthers and stuff like that. You know, the story and the legend of that sounds a lot like, you know, the sirens, you know, that people talk about that lure people into the water, or you know, some of that lore and stuff, the sailor mythology and that. And that's, you know, like that's what CAPS is all about, is putting all these different things. You know, you can't just look at a Bigfoot, because you also have all these other creatures, the wild men, the hairy men, you know, throughout history and different cultures and stuff, and around the world, you know, the Yetis and the Yaren and all these different things that,
Namaste.
yeah,
Namaste too, yeah.
all these different things that have different names. But when you take away the name and you look at what they're talking about, like the
Right.
little people, like the panthers, you know, when you start looking at those things for what they are and not what they're being called, you realize that these things are everywhere, you know, and that they're all possibly the same things.
Right.
I'm not saying that Bigfoot is a siren, but I'm saying like Bigfoot, Yowie, all those type
Right.
of creatures that what do you call it? The archetype of that character, you know, is very similar, very familiar in all these different legends, lores, cultures, history, modern day,
Yeah.
because these people are seeing all these things throughout history, and you don't have books, you don't have the internet, you don't have any of that communication back in the day, you know, and all these people aren't able to say, well, I saw a Bigfoot, or I saw this big hairy thing in the woods. Oh, it must have been a Bigfoot. No, I'm going to give it its own name. You know, the muddy mountain,
Absolutely.
the skunk ape, the grass man,
Right.
you know, all these things. I mean, you just look at just the United States alone with more modern sightings of the creatures and stuff, and the names that we've come up with, you know.
Yeah, so I'm really excited that you do that, because I think that's so important that you look for commonalities in morphology and commonalities in behavior. And yeah, maybe some of it is the bleeding of one culture into another, but what if it's not? What if you know, like some of these creatures that drown people, for example, you know, they've been represented, you know, across the world as different things, and maybe that just is representative of you know, some of these things could be representative of, you know, something sociological, that people like the loss brought on by drownings is so profound that you want something to blame. So maybe it's the Kappa in Japan, or maybe it's the waterman among Russian immigrants, or maybe it's Mississippi among the Ojibwe. So you could look at it that way, that you know, maybe that's just representative of grief. But when you're talking about Bigfoot, for example, I don't really see that, because you know, there's not a death usually associated with Bigfoot. um, so so those observations seem to be different than observations, you know, connected with, you know, someone's death. But yeah, definitely when it's reflected in ancient language, that really makes you wonder.
Yeah, I talk about it all the time. You know, like I talk about the Mokele Membe from the Congo in Africa.
Yeah.
This giant dinosaur sauropod creature, and you know, people are like, "Oh, it's just an elephant." Well, these native people that are there know what an elephant is. You know,
Yes.
the people in the United States knew what, you know, a deer or a bear was. You know, they're represented in, you know, drawings and oral traditions, and you know, their origin, you know, of the bear being their brother as well and stuff in some of these tribes and that. And now you're saying, but we have this large hairy man as well, you know, or we have this dinosaur as well. These people live off the land. They live out there every day, 24/7, all the time. Their lives depend on being able to hunt and eat and trap and know what's out there after dark. They're not just, you know, saying, "Oh, I saw a dinosaur," or, oh, I saw a Bigfoot. You have to take them at their word, because what have they got to lose here? They're not trying to sell stories or books or anything. Their lives depend on what they see and what they depict and passing on that knowledge. So all these people, that have seen stuff prior to the internet and all that, there's got to be something to it, whether it's an alien or an interdimensional or whatever these things are. There's something. They have to exist.
Right. I mean, there's always some information being conveyed. Like maybe in the case of Mississippi, it just tells us that the jaguar had a much more extended range than it does today. But that's still a learning that you get from listening to native stories closely and looking at their depictions. And as you said, we might be very astounded at some of the discoveries that we make that we're not expecting.
Mm-hmm. Well, to your point, you're saying that the jaguar or these water panthers and stuff were all the way up in Illinois, right? Well, just down the road from Alton, Illinois, is the Cahokia Mounds. And that's another big sacred, this huge earthen pyramid mound, again, right outside of St. Louis in the Illinois side, couple minutes from Alton, Illinois and the Piasaw.
And it was a huge city as well.
Yeah, very similar to Aztalan in Wisconsin. And I'm not sure completely on all the history of this, but there was a lot of unknown with these two. And like they don't really know much about the people that lived there. And one of the thoughts was that the people that built these mounds, and Monk's Mound in the Cahokia Mounds area, and the Aztalan in Wisconsin, some people believe that those were actually the Aztec tribes that then migrated south into South America as well, and built the Aztec Empire. But they had started up here in Illinois. So now if you're looking at this jaguar being up here in Illinois with the same people that migrated down there, so it's very, very possible that you have these two very similar things, and that they would know what this jaguar is.
Absolutely. And maybe the jaguar itself, I don't know how far its range extended, but the story maybe traveled with the people, and the wondering of what this creature really was, and the shock of maybe having it take someone in the water. These are all things that contribute to the lore.
Yeah, cryptozoology isn't just Bigfoot, Loch Ness, and all that stuff. It's also creatures that are once somewhere and thought to be extinct and still pop up. Like the Tasmanian tiger, the thylacine over in Australia, hunted to extinction, or what we thought was extinction, but people are still seeing these things. So, and then you have this whole lore of a cryptid called, the Black Panthers. These large black, like a cougar, but solid black. And now you do have Black Panthers, but they're not in the United States. They're not in the United States, quotation marks there. But here is an animal that does exist. We know that these creatures exist. You can go to zoos and see Black Panthers, but they don't exist in the United States. So they're classified as a cryptid because they don't exist, air quotes again. And but do they? Because obviously people have been seeing them. We've had reports of them up in at the Hayden Adventure where we do research. There's trail camera pictures of large black cats down by Wisconsin Dells. I know Linda Godfrey did a whole documentary on Wildcat Mountain down there, all about the legends and the sightings of these black cats that are not supposed to exist, but everyone's seeing them. That's like even wolves and stuff, in Wisconsin that, they don't exist in this part of the state. Well, people are seeing them,
Well, yeah, and I think I can understand why some of the more extreme creatures, it's hard for people to think that that they exist. I can understand that, but when you look into creatures that we know exist, you notice that there is some pushback over just how they're distributed, and if it doesn't meet the status quo, you run up and against the wall, and so it's just interesting that something so slight as the color of something can determine whether it's recognized or not. Um, there are a lot of melanistic creatures, and so why there couldn't be like a black cougar, I don't understand. I don't think that seems that wild to suggest, especially if you have eyewitnesses. But for example, in uh, way back when I was in college, for my undergraduate degree, I took a critical thinking class, and my professor was a writer for many local newspapers, and he said that years ago he wanted to write about the fact that there were coyotes starting to impinge in certain rural areas. And the editor was just like, no, there's no coyotes in Wisconsin. You can't write about that. And so now, years later, there's been coyotes in my backyard. So it just shows you that sometimes ideas take a while to be accepted, no matter if they're very extreme, or if they just seem if they seem like something that is not extreme at all. It can be hard for some people to accept that there might be a reality there.
Yeah, I live right here in Neenah, right by downtown, and I actually have coyotes on security camera running down the street in front of my house. So yeah, but like people always have the pushback of well, if the government knows Bigfoot exists and all this stuff, why don't they admit it? And here's a perfect case. The wolves in Wisconsin. There are certain areas where people have got them on trail cam, or cougars. There's actually a cougar in Neenah a couple weeks ago. I think somebody got one on trail camera in their backyard, and they're like, oh no, we don't have cougars in but here's cat picture. Like there is a cougar in this area, and the DNR will not admit it, because if they do, they have to put out certain warnings and all this paperwork that says, okay, yeah, there's wolves in this part of the state.
With admission comes legal responsibility, and that means money and resources. So a lot of times, whether things are recognized or not, just comes down to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that people don't realize, is that everybody says, well, the world runs on money. It does, and even the biggest thing, like the discovery of a new species. I mean, you have the what was it, the ivory-billed woodpecker, or
Yeah.
The spotted owls, were this huge thing. When they discovered that they were in this area, they couldn't do logging, and now you shut down this whole industry of logging in an area, because now you have a protected species. Well, you know how much money that cost? That was a lot, because now you have to protect the species, and the government side of the whole funding, and then all the logging companies lost money, and it all comes down to that. Now, if you say that all these areas that have Bigfoot activity actually have Bigfoot, look at the roam, the what do you call it, the natural space where these things live, their territory, how big that is, and how much area you're going to need to protect for these species. Well, they're not going to do that, because that shuts down any the city expansions and logging and new road development and all that stuff. And it's this big ball of wax that nobody takes the time to realize.
Right. Then maybe that's our elder brother again, trying to trying to lead us in the stewardship of this world, trying to lead us towards environmentalism and maybe not so much expansion.
Mm-hmm. And definitely, like there's a whole story of Theodore Roosevelt as well wrote in his book about a Bigfoot sighting, And Theodore Roosevelt, our president, was also the one that started the whole national park system.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't make that connection. Very good.
Yeah. So
Well,
there's the speculation that he knew Bigfoot was out there and set aside all this land to protect the Bigfoot. And that's always a very interesting theory that I thought, well, people are like, well, why aren't there like sanctuaries for these animals then? Well, there are.
interesting. I had never thought of it that way. So, speaking of everything running on money, I just want to let everybody know that the Milwaukee Paracon going on this weekend, Saturday, that's the day for speakers and vendors. It is free. You have to go on the website and register just so we can prepare for the number of people coming. But it is free and open to the public. So please join us. And again, that's this Saturday at Alverno at the Bucyrus Center from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Yep. And we will both be speakers there. And there it is. I had to get it back up. Yep. So Milwaukee Paracon this weekend. I'll be speaking. Allison will be speaking. I forgot his name again. The guy that will be speaking.
Terry Cullen.
Thank you. I keep thinking Terry.
There is a Tim. Tim will be talking about UFOs or UAPs. UAPs. I misspoke.
UAPs. Yeah. Speaking of that, I would like to make a comment on that. So it's really interesting that I got to listen to Travis Taylor, Dr. Travis Taylor from Skinwalker Ranch speak.
Oh yeah.
In Vernal, Utah, and he says, like he is in charge of the UAP task force now for the United States government.
Wow.
Doing the research in that, and he says, well, everyone asks, why is this guy that was on Ancient Aliens, and the Skinwalker Ranch, why is he related to the government? How did he get this job? And he goes, I have doctorates in, astrophysics and all this stuff. I think he has 3 or 4 doctorates that he went to school for. He's a very intelligent man, super interesting, but that's beside the point. He spoke on the fact that he goes, well, why did they change the name from UFO to UAP? And he tells the story of how this actually happened. And he goes, everyone thinks it's rebranding. So everyone will stop looking for UFOs and, stop asking about UFOs because they're UAPs. No. So according to Travis Taylor, this is what happened, is that there was a guy, I can't remember who it was, but one of the guys that wanted to push this through. And he said that every time he tried to have a briefing about UFO activity, nobody would hear it. They'd shove it to the floor. And he goes, well, why don't you try changing it to unidentified aerial phenomenon? Because that term has also been used to describe other things that have gone on, the more the phenomenon, not so much the crafts and stuff. So the guy put together this presentation and put it out, and it was like unidentified or UAP threats to the military or something, or to our government or something worded to that nature. And the task force is like, what is this? We need to know all about this. Schedule this meeting. And then the guy went in there and started having this meeting and started talking about UFOs. And they go, wait a minute. How did you get that in here? And that is supposedly the true story of how it became UAPs instead of UFOs. But,
interesting. So this Saturday, Timothy Hughes is going to be starting it out at 10 a.m. talking about theories on the possible origins of UAPs. Yeah, a lot of great speakers. So check it out at MilwaukeeParacon.com for all the information.
Yep, free tickets, free admission. You just have to register. And you don't have to put any credit card information or anything like that. It's all free. There's also a after party at Arcade X, something like that. You're not helpful. What is it? Anyway,
I'm smiling. I'm smiling. I'm like, yeah. Okay.
Arcade, I think
X-ray Arcade.
X-ray Arcade. There we go.
I don't know where that is, but it's in Cudahy on Packard Avenue. Cool. I don't get out much.
Yeah.
So I've never been there.
That will be the
probably great.
Yeah, we'll be hosted by TikTok star Gothsconsin, Taylor Nicole. She is a big TikTok personality, and she does a lot of stories and history of weird things in Wisconsin as well on her TikTok. And she's going to be the MC and host of the after party. And she's also giving a presentation during the Paracon as well. And
Awesome.
yeah. And Mike Huberty will be doing a presentation as well, I believe, at Paracon. And but you can't go see him because I think I'm presenting in the other room opposite him. So you're going to have to make a choice. And we all know the obvious choice there.
That's
so.
right. The obvious choice is you, Barnaby. Don't even mention it.
Don't even mention it. Yeah, sorry. Don't even give him the option.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity, and it's really fun to talk to you on Indigenous Peoples Day. And I hope everybody gets out there and learns more about their local Native cultures.
Definitely. So where can people find more information about you? You know, you got the tours and all your stuff and everything that you do. Where can people find more information?
Yeah, so just go to AmericanGhostWalks.com. Yes, that has an S at the end, because if we only had one ghost walk, we wouldn't have much to talk about. So AmericanGhostWalks.com for all the fun stuff.
Very cool. Awesome. Allison, it's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, you were the perfect guest to have on today. You're always a wealth of knowledge on all different topics. So I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time today.
Thank you so much.
Definitely. All right, guys. Well, if you want to check out Allison or the Ghost Walks or anything, go to the website and come out to Milwaukee Paracon this weekend. I'll be there. Allison will be there. Mike will be there. T will be there from last week. Gothsconsin will be there, and so many others that I don't even have time to tell you about. So it's going to be a great event, free, but you can, T said you cannot register at the door. You have to pre-register. So you have to go to their website and get your tickets signed up there. It's absolutely free. They just got to know how many people are coming. So yeah, check it out. And until next week, guys, we'll see you out there.
The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.